So this is a Tarotscope for the week of October 7th for Pisces. We've got the Seven of Branches, or traditionally this would be the Seven of Wands, the Student of Vessels, which would traditionally be the Page of Cups, and the Three of Branches, which would traditionally be the Three of Wands. So, kind of overall really big picture, there's this like theme of openness and like being open to the spontaneous and figuring out how to soften in order to be open to the unexpected happening, which it's kind of like very much like the Fool, I feel, is kind of like in this reading without like explicitly the card being in there. Like the Fool definitely connects all three of these cards. Kind of like the energy of like well, just get into it. Okay, so the Seven of Branches comes after the Six, and you're probably like, no shit, of course, because 7 follows 6. But what I mean by that is like it's a bit of a linear progression in terms of in the Six of Branches or Six of Wands, we reach some sort of peak. We get some sort of platform. And in the Seven of Branches, it's like we get a peak or a platform, but it's only the 6. It's not the 10. We're not finishing the cycle. It's not the end of anything. So we move into the 7 and have to come off of our platform, and instead of descending and like, going back to the life has a rhythm of like a very cyclical rhythm, and sometimes we have platforms and sometimes we don't, but oftentimes when we move into the 7, there's a lot of resistance of like no longer being in the spotlight or no longer having this platform or this peak kind of moment. It's like when Christmas ends and all of a sudden you were like so excited for snow and it was like super Christmassy, and now Christmas is done and you've got 3 feet of snow, and it's like, well, fuck me, I've got snow for the rest of the winter. So that kind of feeling of like specifically like trying to protect our platform and like stay up on our peak, and feeling like we're being attacked, but it's like it's not, no one's actually attacking us or like calling us out. It's just we're not receiving the same external validation as we did in the 6. So we feel like, oh, I'm not receiving external validation, so like I must be doing something wrong, and then we start to get defensive and feel really competitive and try and like strategize. Like one really great example of the Seven of Branches for me is like anytime I have a post that for some reason goes like viral, like I posted a couple days ago about like gender and like using lunar and solar instead of like masculine and feminine or yin and yang. And that post like got like over 500 likes and like so many comments and went like totally viral. And then all of my posts since then have only gotten like 200 likes. And I could be sitting here going like, oh my God, like, what am I doing wrong? Do I need to like re-strategize my like marketing strategy, or like have more like calls to action in there, or like get really strategic about it, or could I just like go back to the whole like, right, we live under capitalism and Instagram's algorithm is literally so fucking arbitrary, and like the amount of likes I get on a post have no indication of my worth. And like, yes, it's very frustrating that the amount of likes I get on a post affects, and like the amount of not just likes, but like the engagement rate on a post on Instagram completely affects my income. But ultimately it has no indication of like how valuable or worthy I am as a human being. So I'm not saying that this has anything to do with your social media. That is just like an analogy of what I mean, the card, or an example of I can relate to the energy of the Seven of Branches. So yeah, just like not feeling defensive, not going into the whole like oh no, I need to like re-strategize and like come up with like a more aggressive marketing strategy, but resisting the like scarcity and competition of capitalism. So then the next card that comes up underneath it is the student of vessels. So students or pages are ruled by the element of earth, and vessels are ruled by water. So you could think of like energetically the student of vessels as like really rich, juicy soil or like mud. The student of vessels, so we move through the ace to the 10 of a suit, trying to like master our vessel or like master intuition, meaning because vessels, I always look at through the lens of intuition because we're looking at our like relationships and emotions, and if we're operating under the premise of as above, so below, meaning the external is a reflection of the internal, or the tangible things, the material, is a reflection of the immaterial, the intangible. The suit of vessels then is first and foremost about our relationship with self. And the way I define intuition is just my relationship with self. It's how well I trust my gut. So in the ace to the 10, we're trying to like master it. And when we get to the court cards, we finally like understand or like realize like, oh, I don't, instead of telling my vessel what to do, instead of telling my intuition what to do, I just have to listen. And like specifically the student of vessels, it's like, I just have to be present. Like that's all we have to do for intuition, which is like as easy and difficult as just being present. Meaning, so like I always use the example of punch buggies, because a very long time ago, well, not like forever ago, a couple years ago, I had a roommate who made a deal with the universe, and the like good omen from the universe that they were like on the right path or doing the right thing was a yellow punch buggy, and then it's just kind of stuck ever since then. So whenever I see a yellow punch buggy, I stop what I'm doing and like think about like, okay, like what was I doing or saying or thinking when I saw that yellow punch buggy, because whatever that was really important, and I need to pay attention to that because what I pay attention to grows. And so the student of vessels is like, when I say like very present, it's just like present for the yellow punch buggies. Because if we get too focused on like, oh yeah, I need to look for a yellow punch buggy, and like constantly being like on the lookout for a yellow punch buggy, we might miss one because we're looking in one direction, and the yellow punch buggy might, I might be looking over here and the yellow punch buggy shows up here and I miss it because I'm so focused on like, I'm looking for a yellow punch buggy and like waiting for it. So, the student of vessels is just like the invitation to be present, and to like fully experience and like feel all of the emotions that come up with the 7 of branches, and like feel the defensiveness, and start to get to like, so through being present and really feeling the experience and just like being there to experience it, and the 7 of branches, you'll be able to understand like the root causes of your defensiveness and like the root causes behind your like what fear is behind competition and scarcity. Like, is it the fear of lack? Like there's not enough to go around. Going back to the like Instagram analogy, it's like the fear of not being a good enough tarot reader because no one's validating my posts. And that could go all the way back into like imposter syndrome and like a very long conversation that I'm not going to get started in because it's a little off topic. But so the student of vessels, we're grounding our intuition. So that could really tangibly this week look like a literal like grounding practice. Whatever that looks like for you. So like for me, playing music has always been really grounding because it's like with having ADHD, I need a lot of stimulation. So like to be playing an instrument and like using my hands and making sure I'm playing the right notes at the right time with my hands, and then also singing and getting enough air in my diaphragm that I can hit all the right notes with my like vocally. It just requires so much concentration that I literally, like, my brain is empty. I can't think about anything other than like what I just described. So singing and playing music for me has always been really grounding. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean, I know when people talk about grounding, they're like, oh yeah, go put your feet in the dirt, which like maybe for you works, but for me doesn't. So also I live in the city, so I can't really do that. But well, like I have a backyard, but I wouldn't want to go barefoot in there because I live in the city. So anyways, and then the last card we have is the Three of Branches. So threes for me are always trinities, meaning it's three things in one. You could think like Father, Son, Holy Spirit if you like grew up raised Christian. So branches having to do, or wands having to do with the realm of like, we say like passion, inspiration, motivation, drive. For me, I've been experimenting with using the phrase joy to describe or kind of sum up the suit of branches under the definition of this philosopher Spinoza, who said that, or who defines joy as our ability to affect or be affected, meaning our ability to affect others or be affected by others, or like it's kind of just like our ability to give a shit about our life and about other people and have other people give a shit about us. So and the Three of Branches, if we're a trinity around joy, is like someone who has, in terms of like the realm of the shit we care about, someone who is a master of it, or like someone who's so, meaning like not like a conqueror, but just like someone who is so skilled in joy that they are able to teach. So like I like to teach tarot and have started recently teaching tarot. And then someone who's still a student of joy, meaning like I am still studying tarot and like always will be. And then the third part of the trinity is someone who's like open to the unexpected. So like a blank slate, or I often think of the Fool with this card. The third aspect I like to call like the trinity of like teacher, student, fool, meaning like the Fool is completely embryonic. They're card 0. They haven't come out into the world in card 1, the Magician, yet. They're still, it's like the world before the Big Bang kind of thing. So it's like to recap, to like teach tarot, study tarot, and be open to doing something completely unrelated to tarot, or like maybe it is related to tarot but like completely different. So like right now, or like recently, my Three of Branches experience was like teaching tarot this summer with tarot mentorships, studying tarot, because like I'm always studying tarot and like learning more. It's a lifelong thing. I don't know any good tarot teachers who aren't still students. And then being open to something completely different was this summer. I did a spell to set a goal or an intention to read like a certain amount of tarot readings every week. And instead, well, on the spell, I put this or something better, meaning this is the very best thing I can think of, but I'm open to there being something better, and that there being an option that I never could expect because it's just outside of my lived experience or outside of my like limited perception as a human being. So like within, oh, and that whole like this or something better thing, I'm pretty sure I saw it on Mary Evans of the Spirit Speak Tarot. On her Instagram, she did like a candle spell and it was on the candle. So anyways, that's just like to give credit where credit's due. But yeah, so like within like 24 hours, a friend of mine randomly emailed me and was like, oh hey, like my friend's launching this app and needs someone to do some like marketing and stuff, a variety of different things, and like, are you free, are you doing anything? And I was like, sure, yes, I'm like reading tarot full time, but I could certainly use extra income. And then like had a meeting with this person the next day, and like the app was like had a tarot deck in it and like was all about, it's called like #self-care, and like has all of this really amazing, really cool stuff that's like right up my alley. And my friend who recommended me had like no idea, didn't know I read tarot, and had like no idea that this would be such a perfect fit. So that's what I mean by like the embryonic, like blank slate, open to like complete like unexpected. And like that kind of energy also is a bit like in the student of vessels. It's like only through having really grounded intuition can we be open to like spontaneous, like specifically the student of vessels is like spontaneous kind of moments of vulnerability and like connection. So yeah, moving through the seven of branches, if we're talking about like connection and the seven of branches being like craving the external validation and like learning that fame or external validation are like not the reasons why we commit to doing our like passion or like following joy or increasing our joy, meaning our ability to affect or be affected. We follow our joy because, or like follow pleasure because, one, why would we do something that makes us feel bad? Like we have this whole like very Puritan knowledge, like focus on demonizing pleasure, but like one, there's nothing wrong with pleasure, and like pleasure is such a good and valid and worthy goal. And also like part of it is just figuring out what our role is in our ecosystem and how to fulfill that, and like all we have to focus on is fulfilling our role in our ecosystem. We don't have to like worry about whether or not someone's giving us like a pat on the back for it or not. Or like I don't need everyone telling me like, oh, you're such a good tarot reader. So like for me, like the seven of branches reversed has been like letting go of my ego in terms of like for a while I thought I was a bad tarot reader because at the end of a tarot reading no one was telling me like, oh yeah, you did a really good job, like that's all totally happening. And it was just because they were like taking it all in and like processing it, and it was a lot of information, and they were just kind of like, whoa, and like thinking about it, that they weren't thinking to be like, oh yeah, like thanks for the reading, that was so great. So I just like thought I was a really bad tarot reader. And I mean, I don't think it's like self important or like bragging to be like, no, like I actually, it was the opposite. I gave a really good reading and there was a lot to think about, and like it's just because I wasn't hearing the like external validation that I thought I was doing it wrong. But now I've kind of gotten to a point where it's like I don't need someone to tell me at the end of a reading like, yeah, that was really good, you're like super accurate. Like I've let go of that and kind of structured my readings so like at the end all I do is ask if there's any questions, like if there was anything I said that was inaccessible, or like call it like tarot speak, like was there any tarot speak I used that like didn't make a lot of sense, because I want to make sure that like what I say is communicated accessibly. So I've like completely structured my tarot readings to not even include like, oh cool, like do you want to talk about how this applies to your life right now? Because, you know, for the most part, if people do, they'll like say that and they'll bring it up. And I don't really need to structure that into my reading. So like, yeah, moving through the seven of branches, like completely restructured how I read tarot, in terms of relating it back to imposter syndrome. But yeah, the like the seven of branches can feel really crunchy and kind of splintered and like defensive and maybe a little passionate. Obviously like it's ruled by fire, so that makes sense. But yeah, if we figure out how to be like the soft kind of juicy soil and the student of vessels, instead of like, so in the seven of branches, all of the branches are like separate, and kind of like protective. And then we've got our three branches here connecting and like supporting each other. And like specifically if we look like here, we've got like the branches like holding each other up. And so we have that like, we can have that like synthesis and like move through the seven of branches, if we focus more on like the openness and Yeah, the softening, the like soft, rich, juicy soil. So anyways, I hope you have a lovely week, and I will see you next week.